Palestine. And we were just discussing about the Israeli settlers, and Sister Nadine was mentioning about a poll that I think was a majority of them wanted to...
They'd be always leaving if it resulted in genuine peace. Yeah.
I have to disagree, having been there 2 times in the last year and speaking to both Israelis and Palestinians, and then having experienced both in Nablus and the Gaza Strip direct fire into homes, civilian homes from Israeli settlers who were not being encroached upon. They were on top of a hill, protected by heavy military tanks as well as passing Apache helicopters, that they are certainly not sending the message that they are willing to leave for peace. I think it's the exact opposite. And when I visited Shifa Hospital, many of the children who are casualties are from the settler area. Palestinians who are working in the fields who are shot at innocently.
I mean, it's also important, what that statistic tells me is that settlers are a governmental policy. In other words, settlers are Israelis who are sent into Palestinian populations to sort of create an Israeli governmental presence and interest within that population. So once you send, Israelis into a Palestinian territory, then the Israeli army says, oh, we have to be there to protect the settlers. And what they do is they take people fresh off the boat, like new immigrants basically, and they give them incentives and a lot of benefits to move into the Palestinian people, and they become kind of like a buffer between the Palestinian people and the army. So, but then, as I believe he was mentioned, it's ideological too.
It's also a form of land confiscation. In the Gaza Strip, it's 140. It's not a large area. It's the most densely populated area in the world. There's 1.25 to 1.5 million people living there, and 40% of the land has been repossessed by Israeli settlers.
5,000.
Yeah, 4,000 to 5,000 people, controlling 40% of the land. This is
interesting. I read something that they use like more water. The 4,000 settlers use more water, and they pay less for it than the 1.2.
They actually use 90% of the water resources into the Gaza Strip.
It's just like that in the West Bank, and that's because the Israeli government, which controls the water, gives it to the Israelis. I mean, this is exactly like apartheid. It's the same thing. One set of laws and benefits for one people. In this case, the Israelis are privileged, and one set of laws that affect the Palestinian people and oppress them, in fact.
It's not like it is.
It is. And in fact, in Israel, the Palestinians who were pre-48 who did stay are seen as second-class citizens. They do not have the same rights as Israeli citizens. And that's a huge problem in itself.
So it's almost like...
I'm sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say, well, then I think, coming back to the comment, it's interesting that the media is portraying the Israelis as being, we'll do anything for peace, and the majority of us will do anything for peace, and that's all we want, and we'll even go out of our way to do that.
Palestinians are terrorists.
Exactly.
That's the general...
And that they don't want peace, and they're the ones stopping the peace process.
Yeah. Well, the policymakers in this country right now are very pro-Israeli. I mean, everyone from like Richard Pearl to Donald Rumsfeld to Dick Cheney, they're on the record as being pro-Israeli. And it's funny because the United States says we can be an honest broker. Yeah. We can mediate peace. But the truth is, I just feel like education's our future, but they're taking like our future and investing it into Israel's future.
And we're subsidizing it as U.S. citizens.
Well, we subsidize it, but I don't think you should fall into the trap deciding it's a kind of a zero-sum proposition where if you take money and invest it in Israel, you take it away from education in California. It never works that way. I think, and I don't think you should even use that argument. I think you should look at really what the issue is, that American money is subsidizing occupation and policies that for the American people were totally intolerable in South Africa. I think that's really the crux of the issue. Whether, you take this amount of money and put it back in U.S. classes, it doesn't work that way, and the American government will find other ways to waste that money on something else.
But if we made a campaign, saying take the aid from Israel and put it into schools, and it became a successful campaign, then that's what would happen.
I think the point that Will is making is important, is that most Americans don't have the political understanding of American foreign policy that us here discussing the issue do. And they need something to relate to. And they need to become part of some kind of grassroots movement. And for that to happen, they need to have something that they could directly have their hands in. something that affects their families, such as their kids' education. And Michael's point is valid, that it is not a zero-sum game. I agree with that. My point is that they still need to tie this into their daily lives. Otherwise, most people don't care about what's going on outside of their own local district, let alone foreign policy.
I mean, so many levels the Americans should relate to the Palestinians. I mean, at the most basic level, you can look at this graph, and what this graph shows is that before 1948, almost 100% of the people living in historic Palestine were Palestinians. If you come here toward 1991, the number of Palestinians living in the same land is 50%, and the other half is Israelis. So what this graph shows is that the Palestinians were kicked out, and they're becoming a smaller population in their own homeland. Americans everywhere would hate if this happened in their own neighborhood.
Absolutely.
If they came in and were kicked out by force. So on the most basic level, I feel like the Americans should support the Palestinians, but because they don't know the history, it's just not happening.
Yeah. Fortunately, we have run out of time today, and I'm sure we'll have to do another show about Palestine. So thank you for watching. Thank you for my guests for coming today. And please check us out online at muslimroundtable.tv. Send us your comments about the show, any questions you have. You can also call us toll-free at 1-877-493-6089. And thanks again for watching the Muslim Roundtable show. Thank you very much.